Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. It's excellent that you've come today. If you've come via YouTube and want to know more about what we do, head on over to officehours.global. That's our primary web portal for more information and links about the show. If you start there, you can find all sorts of things for you to do, among which is to put your questions into the system, because your questions drive the conversation here every day. You can do it through the Mukana interface, which has the extra bonus of allowing you to vote questions up and down, and that's really how we determine what topics we get to earliest and which we spend the most time discussing. You can also use the QR code, which is popped up in the corner of the screen down here, or use the equivalent to just enter askofficehours.global on the web. You'll get to the same interface. That'll allow you to submit questions for today's show kind of in real time if you'd like to do that. But unfortunately, it is not the same system where you can vote them up and down. So you just add your questions in, and then they will get mixed in the back end here, and we'll address them. Today, our second hour, Final Pixel CEO Michael McKenna and Executive Producer Hanah Draper are going to be here as our guests. They'll be here to talk about the state of virtual production, where it's headed in Hollywood and beyond, its effect on filmmaking in general, but that's our second hour. This is our first hour, and we always concentrate on your interests and concerns. So, Mitch, what's our first question for today?
Thank you, Bill. Let's kick it off with a QR code question from Jerry Walser from San Francisco, California. The panelists often talk about all the projects they work on. However, spending 4 hours every day on office hours seems like it wouldn't allow much time left for real projects. How is everyone dividing up time for projects?
Sleep? Who needs sleep? What's sleep? Courtney, start us off.
I just avoid real projects. Having retired about 8 years ago, those of us, those panelists that are of a certain age, don't have to worry about earning a living quite as much, so we can pick and choose what projects we work on, which is definitely not what everyone can do. So that's how I avoid the problem, although I do have conflicts. I won't be on this Thursday because I got an early call. I have to go out and actually work with people in the field, but that's how I manage it. And some people, a lot of us, can have side hustles where we can kind of call our own hours. And those of us that live on the West Coast, office hours is done by 9 o'clock usually. We can reserve the rest of the day for other activities.
Jeffrey Powers.
Well, as you guys have seen, I haven't been on office hours as much lately because of a lot of different things and some new projects that I'm working on. It is a give and take, but you have to think to yourself, what's the value that comes out of doing anything, whether it's coming on office hours or making toast for breakfast or anything like that. What kind of value do you get out of it? And for a lot of us, it's, for me being on here, it's FaceTime with a lot of people. So we can do some networking. For the people in the back end, they're working on maybe there's something that they've never done before to kind of hone in a skill so they can put that on their resume. So it's really what you can take out of it, and of course the hours that you put into it. And can this become an addiction? Absolutely. During COVID, I think I was most addicted to this little thing here. It's something that you have to just kind of balance out on the work life and home life.
Absolutely. Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree. Jerry, I like your reference to real work. I'm going to equate that to paying jobs because we're all volunteers here on office hours. And I'm emotionally attached to being here. I enjoy it. It's what I do for myself. I'm self-motivated, if that's an oxymoron, I don't know, for the real work that I do. And I would love more of that stuff because I am semi-retired, but I still love doing motion graphics and editing and all the other stuff that we did when we were making big bucks. But for now, we managed to manage the time and the money.
Chris Fenwick.
4 hours? There's 4 hours? What, you guys been holding out on me? What's going on? No, so Jerry, there's a lot of hours in the day, and I will say that COVID changed, for one thing, I don't commute anymore, so there's a couple hours right there. And I think my main motivation for being here is that I just think somebody has to be around to keep Courtney checked. Otherwise, he gets too crazy, all Windowsy. So I have to pull him back a little bit.
That's great. For me personally, this is just, the world is changing very fast out there. And it's really easy if you stop doing what you loved doing at a different part of your life, or if you try to keep doing the same thing. My feeling these days is the world just speeds past you. So when I discovered office hours in the early days, I think it was Chris Fenwick who actually pinged me with some email in like week 1. And I went, oh, this is the opposite of boredom. This is the part of me that's curious about stuff. Is there actually a place I can go sit every day and just learn about all the new things coming? And the new things were important because the world that I exist in for both work and my personal pleasure, technology, things that I'm interested in, was changing so fast. To find a place where I could talk to other people about that and listen to other people, even more critically, talk about what was changing. And so I wouldn't be unable to converse or think or try to figure out where the industry was going a little bit by virtue of ignorance of all the technologies that were changing. That's what really just lit up my brain and said, this is a really good place to be. I'll meet very nice people, and I have. I will learn immense amounts without having to pay for that. And the trade-off is that it'll take my time, but it's turned out to be an absolute joy to be here. So that's why I'm still here on office hours. I'm finding it fun every day to be here, and I'm hoping it continues long into the future. Mitchell Heel, you want to come back on this?
It's a bit of a social network. It's also a bit of a business network because we tend to hire each other in doing lots of work. And Chris, I'm looking for that check in the mail, by the way. I appreciate all the referrals that I get because they know who I am and what my weirdness is and how, what my specialties are. And I don't really have that kind of relationship with all my clients out there.
Yeah, I give Chris back 10% of everything I earn here. So
that's why I don't work.
Of null is still null. Let's go on to the next question.
Another QR code question coming in from Francis Frey in Cambridge, Mass. We have 2 home studios in our house. I want to bring the audio and video from the downstairs office into the ATEM of my upstairs office so I can create an ATEM super source layout from both studios. What are your recommendations?
This is another QR code question, and let's start with Jeffrey Powers here. Jeffrey?
So, yeah, that was the fun thing. When my last studio, actually, I had 2 parts to the studio. I had the studio and the production area, and I brought stuff back and forth using multiple ways. The first thing that we need to find out is if you can actually put holes in your wall or your ceiling or whatever, because it sounds like you want to do more than one. So if you want to do one source, it's a little bit easier. But if you want to do up to 4 sources, then you've got to put a little bit of thought into it. So if you can't put holes into your house to run cables, the easiest way, of course, being to run HDMI cables through the walls and patch bays. But if you can't do that, then the next thing to do is to figure out how you can run things that you already have. Like, for instance, one of the things that I use is one of those HDMI to network adapters. So basically you have this little box that has the HDMI that comes in and then a network cable that goes out, and then it goes to the other side where the another box then captures it and turns that into HDMI. For the ATEM, you do have the the stream? I just lost it. Hold on. It's the streaming bridge, that's what it's called, where you can take it from an ATEM and then bring it to another ATEM, assuming you have an ATEM in the first studio and you're going to an ATEM in the second studio. Other than that, if you want to get a little bit creative and latency is not as much of an issue, then you can always go send it out via NDI and then come in via NDI and then bring it into some sort of software to hardware solution that would then go into your ATEM. There's many other options, but those are the main 3 that I've used and I can talk about.
Mitchell.
Yeah, I like Jeffrey's idea of using that balun and converting it to an IP-based thing that you can run over your Ethernet. You may already have an Ethernet network or connection that you can run upstairs. It's a little bit easier to wire. The other options, don't forget, is that some ATEMs are SDI based. You can run an SDI line. Anything that will keep that audio and the video muxed together on the HDMI or the SDI is good. Don't try to separate them out and bring them back together, because that just adds a little bit of latency and weird sync headaches. So I think you've got a lot of suggestions there, and I'm sure Chris has got another one.
Chris Fenwick.
I was just going to say, Francis, this is a first world problem if I ever heard one. Be careful who you express this to. You might get beat up on the schoolyard. Yeah, what I was going to, first of all, Jeffrey, I question the thing that turns it into a network. Have you used those? Does that work well?
Yeah, I've before I had cameras that had NDI built into them, I would use them to bring them. So basically, my old studio, I had the cameras go up to the other studio where it would be capturing on Vmix. Vmix would then send down a feed to the main studio just so I could monitor what was going on. So all the production was happening in the other room and then coming back. So the biggest thing with these dongle-to-dongle HDMI to network is you don't run it through your regular network. It's most likely a straight through cable. You can put it into a router, but you can't have that router on your network. But there are some.
I was going to ask if that would work on your normal gigabit network. So
there are some that will allow you, but you have to. Nothing you could probably find on Amazon, and the cost would be skyrocketing.
And then the other thing, Francis, I was going to say is, one of the things I find very interesting about this business is many, I was going to say most, but many of us are strangely void of like craftsmanship skills, general, like, can you cut a hole in drywall? And I used to know a guy who had a edit suite in his living room, and his dining room was a machine room. He also had 0 friends, but he couldn't even get a hole through the wall. I'm like, have you ever seen a drywall saw? It's pretty simple. He goes, oh, no, I don't want to get into that. So knowing some basic, carpentry skills might be useful. Also, of course, as Jeffrey sort of alluded to, upstairs, downstairs, are they literally right above each other? Because that's going to be the easiest. I would punch some holes in walls and ceilings and bears on mine.
Nothing like an extended drill bit as a solution to problems. Courtney.
You could drill from both sides.
Yeah, a Balun probably isn't going to work for you because that's primarily for sending analog video, but they do make boxes like was discussed by Jeffrey here. These are called HD-based T extenders. You can get them, I guess, $79. I don't know if that's each or for a pair. You need an encoder and a decoder that converts it to packetted signal, digital signal, and transmits it along with infrared signals and RS-232 and POC. So a lot of the signals that are available on an HDMI will be transmitted along over this Ethernet cable up direct. You don't need a switch or anything, just a direct cable-to-cable connection with that. It also sends power, too, so it can power the remote box from the source box if you have power into the source box, I think.
That's how I get my video from upstairs down to my big TV set. So when a client is here, I can sit them down, push play remotely, and boom. So, yeah, those work great.
Yeah, and the best part is if you put it on a switch, then you can actually have the signal go to multiple monitors.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Francis, I hope we took care of your question. Oh, Courtney, do you have one last thought before we finish
I
up?
did want to point out that it does support HDCP 2.2.
Okay.
So if you do have trying to send copyrighted information, it has a copyright flag set. It may not show up in the device on the other end because it will respect that copyright flag.
There you go. Let's move on to the next question.
Mike Edwards from Brooklyn, New York is here with a question. Morning, everyone. Looking at purchasing a new standing desk. Which make and model does the panel recommend? And thanks.
We're going to start with our resident woodworker, Chris Fenwick.
The one I've actually used and purchased and eventually got rid of was the one from IKEA makes one, actually. It's very affordable. The mechanism is fine. It works quite well. My part of the reason why I got rid of it was I didn't find. You got to remember, for the kind of stuff that, it might be me. So as an editor, I very much care about the speakers, and I very much care about the picture, and all of that stuff has to go up and down. And so the IKEA desk was a little bit too small for 2 monitors, 2 27-inch computer monitors, and 2 speakers. And so what ended up happening was the speakers just stayed on stands. They were a little too high when I was seated and a little too low when I was standing. And I remedied the problem by just getting better chairs to sit in.
Oh, interesting solution. Harshid.
I'm going to go ahead and say, I go ahead and see what Steelcase has to offer. I mean, they always make some good, solid products. I use their chairs, for example, as Chris alluded to chairs. But they definitely make some great products. They might be a little bit more on the pricey side. And then for a cheaper one, I think I heard Alex say the other day, Husky might make a rolling or a moving desk like that. I'm not sure if he just meant it had wheels on it or if it went up and down. But there was a standing desk by Husky as well.
Mitch Hill.
Yeah, I'll confirm what Hershey just said about the Husky. Go to Home Depot, as for Homer, and you can get for about $200 a nice standing and sitting desk because it has the ability to raise it and lower it. And it's really, really well built, and it's also very, very reasonably priced.
Do they still have a Homer at Home Depot in most of the departments? Somebody who really knows.
Homer is the character that.
Oh, is it the character?
He's
I
on
thought
all the
at one
buckets.
point I heard something about maybe they had somebody designated who had a lot of experience as opposed to just a retail associate. But I don't know, maybe not.
Now you're
Jeffrey,
messing with my mystique here.
Jeffrey Powers, sorry.
So I've had a standing desk for a long time. This desk right here, it's the Ergotron WorkFit D. I reviewed it like back in 2017. Now, the thing about this desk is it's not electronic. You have to pull up a lever and then manually lift it up. There are a lot of things to think about when you're doing a sit-stand desk. The first thing is overweighting the desk, because once you get to a certain weight, the desk will have a hard time lifting and lowering, and you could probably hurt things. In the mechanics, they do make L-shaped desks if you need more space, where it comes with 3 legs and then, of course, wraps around a corner, so it'll lift and go down from there. The other thing you could think about is if you need a lot of desk space, but you just want to stand for a little bit, and you could try the scissors lift desks and see how that would work for you. They're a little bit more inexpensive, even though inexpensive in this case is probably still expensive. So you could give that a try and see what works best for you. But the overall, I'm like I said, Ergotron. That's what a lot of hospitals will use. It's a little bit expensive on that. And a couple others that were already mentioned here. So just if you can get into a store and look at how the desk mechanisms work, if you can move the lift lower area from one side to the other, how it locks, how it unlocks, because if you go to move it and you accidentally hit the wrong button, this thing could come springing up and hit you in the jaw, and you just don't want that to happen. And then, of course, the space that you need for the desk, how that's going to work. There's many different options, and there's even options without where you don't even need to get the tabletop. You make your own tabletop, so you can customize it to whatever you need.
Chris Fenwick, you want to come back?
And yeah, last comment, Mike. Don't forget, all the cables attached to that desk have to have enough free range to go through the whole movement.
Yeah,
that was something that like kind of caught me by surprise. When I first said it, I was like, this is going to be harder than I thought.
Yeah, I've had this Middle Atlantic desk for probably 25, maybe 30 years now. That I can't imagine trying to make it work with a lift system, because the desk itself probably weighs 400 or 500 pounds with all the junk I have on it. Particularly, I'm looking at like mic stands, even desktop mic stands that are made out of cast iron that are there to make sure that there's nothing vibrating in the audio path. This thing probably is pushing 700 or 800 pounds, and I'm not sure a lift mechanism would like that all that much. But to each their own. Mitch, you had a last comment?
That desk is rooted in an era of large CRT monitors too.
Yeah.
That's an older desk. So
yeah,
I'll tell you, my primary desk right here is an IKEA dining room table with both leafs in, and it is It's like 6.5 feet long.
Yeah, absolutely. Mitch, last comment?
Yeah, Mike, the other thing is make sure you like standing up and working, because we had this come through our radio station where we were used to the old-fashioned guys with the squeaky chair and the sit-down desk, and then we went to the stand-up console. It got kind of painful for me because I guess because the sciatic and the age was kicking in. So make sure you like standing up. But if you have one that can do both, that's the way to go.
Let's head off into our next question.
Danny Grizzle from Longview, Texas. In yesterday's show, a question about smooth fluid heads drifted into a brief discussion of geared heads. Has anyone used a Kessler Cineshooter with NODO Inertia Wheels?
Courtney Gooden.
I have not used it personally. I've seen it on a set once used. This is kind of a lightweight remote pan tilt head that you can find here. This one's a Cineshooter from at around about $3,000. But the problem is for larger rigs, and yesterday we were talking about something with a big box lens on it and a pretty heavy camera. This is only rated for 15 pounds. So if you've got a DSLR rig without a lot of junk on the back of it, which, and some of those DSLR rigs can weigh up to 30 pounds. I've seen them, especially a Red camera or any other DSLR where you're adding a recorder and monitor and remote focus and lens, big long lens, etc. So, and the wheels that they're talking about are just weighted chunks of aluminum, circular chunks of aluminum on two encoders for pan and tilt that sit on a separate device that communicate either over Bluetooth or by wire to this remote head so that you can mount it separately on the end of a crane arm, for example, and operate it remotely. But like I say, a 15-pound limit is pretty low for a professional camera.
Mitchell?
I wanted to quickly put my 2 cents in for Kessler products. Is they're very well made. The machining and the standards and the precision of everything they make. I've got everything from a Kessler stand to go on the bottom of my camera so it can stand on a table to a Arca device behind me to I'm going to play with what you're talking about, the Cine head. That would be really cool. I'm just saying, good stuff.
I think you should run out and grab one of these. I was at the Motion Picture Industry Museum. This is actually the camera rig that shot The Godfather. And so you can see that lovely, gigantic geared head wheel with the little chrome knob on it. I think you need one of those for your iPhone. That would be just about a perfect match. Let's go to the next question.
Scott Tupper from Livermore, California. Vmix version 27 launched yesterday with Zoom integration. Is anyone concerned with overtaxing the system resources?
Jeffrey Powers.
Oh, absolutely. The problem with software switchers is that when a newer version of the software switcher comes out, the hardware stays the same. Whereas a hardware switcher, you get a whole brand new hardware switcher, which meets those requirements. So somebody that has a computer that they got Vmix like 4 or 5 years ago, they get 27 on, and all of a sudden they've got these new features to it, and then they're running into problems. Now, Vmix, their minimum requirements, basically quad core, 3.4 gigahertz, 8 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, and an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1050 card, and stuff like that. When you start to do more than 2 to 4 person Zoom, that's going to start to really tax on the system. So, and of course, Vmix is meant for a graphical interface or graphic user. So if you have a computer that has multiple graphics cards in it, you're gonna have better performance on there. It's also not impossible to actually get another instance of Vmix on another computer, and you got to pay for it, of course. But then you can kind of split some of the tasks back and forth, and a lot of like remote things, like if you want to set up your Stream Deck onto another computer, and then run the buttons from there. That way you're not taxing your overall system, but getting the latest and greatest computer is probably the best, and making sure that you're not overloading it with different programs like your editing software and 50 tabs of whatever browser you run or anything like that. Then you're going to have your best overall performance for what you do. So I always go back to the when during COVID when they did the late shows, how they did that. They did a lot of things, and they mixed the environments. They used both Vmix and Wirecast in those cases, but they used more than one computer. And if you go to any production, you can actually see what their production is like. They're not using one computer for everything. So keep in mind, you can split them up, and it's going to be in some cases it's going to be a little bit tougher to do, but it still can be done.
Let's head to the next question.
From Lou Perez in Santan Valley, Arizona. Sorry, Lou. Recently, I read that one reason to use a pop filter or mic sock is to help prevent moisture and droplets from getting into the capsule and degrading the microphone's performance. Have you ever heard of this, and do you think it has any merit?
Courtney, start us off.
Well, to some degree, it does keep the spittle from building up and you don't want it to get to the mic capsule. Most microphones, have a screen of some sort that will trap most large drops. True condenser microphones do have a problem with moisture building up between the two surfaces of the capsule, the diaphragm and the backplane. And because they're very, very close, condenser microphones are, and even moisture that condenses out of the air. The pop filter is not going to stop that. The moist air will get in; it'll condense if the microphone's cold and taken out into a moist, damp, warm area. It can condense and it can cause the microphone to fail, or you start to hear pops and things on it. Pop filters are mainly to prevent puffs of air hitting. Some of these, I have a beef with this one. This is the one that came with that microphone I just held up, the Pro AR. They send this. I like the woven mesh better than these because this is just an open pore chunk of foam, which I don't know, you can actually see through it. But it has larger gaps on it, and the problem with this open core foam, rather than a tight weave nylon, which is usually what pop filters are made of, is that when you blow through this, it whistles. It makes more noise. The air passing through it makes more noise than it stops. So I'd go with the nylon mesh over one of these open pore foam devices.
Mitch Hill.
Yeah, I would avoid anybody that sprays when they recopy. It's not very good. As to the foam, I've got an AKG 414 sitting right here below me, and this is a $100. Yes, that's a $100 piece of foam that you can place over it. And I'm not much of a spitter as far as that goes, even though, I did have to think about this question for a second, Lou. When you said pop filter, I got to thinking, they up in upstate New York, they call soda pop. Soda pop, get it? So maybe it could be a problem. But I would say that a pop filter is more likely to hold moisture in than it would be to block the occasional droplet goes flying at it or some of your lunch.
Having grown up in most of my career in Arizona, I never had to worry about humidity very much. More important here in Southern California and not that far from the ocean. I will say that, according to what Courtney's saying, I've used this one for probably 20 years. It's a Middle Atlantic double screen, and it has nylon, so I don't think you can see anything through it, although it is acoustically reasonably transparent. And when I'm using my good mic, the Neumann TLM 103, which I use for the audiobook recording, as opposed to the Sennheiser MKH 416, which I use here on the show because it's just much more convenient and much easier to work for this kind of thing. Always.
I was going to say, does that pop filters tend to collect food debris also?
No, and maybe it's because I almost never eat here in the studio, and I certainly don't do that before, and no, I haven't had any problem. I've had both of these in operation. I mean, this one that's on here, and I wish you hadn't made me think about it because it had a stray piece of lint on it. This has been here for the entirety of the show since I moved from my other microphone, so probably 2 years straight. That pop filter for the Neumann has been in use for probably 10 years, 12 years at least. And I've never had to clean it. It doesn't seem to be anything. So maybe it's individual. Maybe it's just how you perform.
A lot of foam tends to deteriorate over time. They just turn into dust. So you got to replace them.
Also, one of the things I learned in radio in my early days was how to create sound without extra air going out, even pees and things like that. You just learn, you might have seen my mouth go pee into a different position as opposed to pee, which blows out a lot of air. You just learn some of the techniques of not causing problems when you start announcing under headphones and you can hear a sensitive mic hit all those plosives. You learn how to say them differently. Part of it's just conditioning. Courtney, other thoughts?
Yeah, the stretch nylon filters like the one that you showed, pop filters that you showed, form like a little trampoline for those little pieces of food that you've just eaten. It bounces right off and lands on your nose.
You're saying they've been on my shirt all this time instead of my windscreen?
It lets you know what you had for lunch.
I don't like that. Mitchell.
Yeah, now we're stepping into the gross area. I used to work in radio where we had a big foam windscreen on our SM7B, and they can get really stinky. You can tell the person before you had for lunch or whether they're a smoker or not. It can be a problem. As to moisture, I don't know, but the food odors were a problem.
I think it's time to move on to the next question.
Here we go. Robert Sababity from Poland. Can a panelist share their present mail kits in 2024? Osbot Air Tail, Rhode Extremer X, SM7B plus stands. Any plans for a new kit?
Jeffrey Powers.
For me, actually, I haven't been sending out kits as of recent. That's kind of slowed down. But what I do a lot of now is going out and setting up my own kit, which is pretty much has a lot of things. My lowest end kit has the Mevo start to it. It has the Osbot Tail Air. That's the wireless one, not these OBSBOTs. And of course, it comes with, it depends on the microphone, if I can run a wireless or if I can run a 2.4 gigahertz wireless, or if I want to run a corded microphone from there. If I was to send, right now my media kit that I do send out is rather old. I'd say about 2021, and it's the idea of that is it's basically you pull it out of the case and you put it on a stand, you plug it in, like 2 plugs, and that's it, and then let me worry about everything else. So as for the Tail Air, that's a great option if you have the ability to control it, and if you don't have, which nowadays you do. I know that you can do Stream Deck buttons for the Tail Air, but if you have no ability to control it, then it becomes something dead to you, and you won't be able to get the shot that you're looking for. So, yeah, that's what I have right now.
When you say present mail-out kits for production, I would guess that today's might be different than 10 days or 2 weeks ago, only because there's so much activity in this area. So many people are interested in podcasting and doing this kind of stuff on a personal basis. It's been such a huge change from when I was starting off in the industry all those decades ago, where you literally couldn't get the equipment to do any kind of broadcasting unless you hooked up with a large organization because it was real expensive. And now almost everybody's doing it. And the plus of that is that companies are chasing those dollars, and there is so much I'm always gobsmacked when I look at how little money I would have to spend if I had a problem and had to recreate what I have here. I could do it for probably a 20th or maybe a 50th of what I spent back in the day to get the same capabilities. Chris Fenwick, you had some thoughts?
I had a question for Jeffrey. Jeffrey, the Tail Air, do you use the micro HDMI output of that? Have you used it?
I have used it, and it works really well. But a lot of times I use the NDI feature out of that because I'm trying to keep my case as empty as possible.
Right. I was just curious about the HDMI. So it works
less
good.
Stuff to travel with. I mean, I remember the days of just tons and tons of Rode cases. And boy, the fact that I can pack in a backpack enough stuff to do a show remotely just still surprises me. And I think it's going to continue in that direction. I think at some point, a couple of phones and a couple of wires, and you'll probably be able to do a 3-person webcast from the road. Let's go to the next question.
Thanks to Robin Cutshaw from Atlanta, Georgia for their submission. Have you upgraded your Mac to Sonoma, and any issues?
Let's start with Chris Fenwick. Chris?
Yeah, Robin, I get teased a lot because I do upgrade pretty fast. And by and large, if I didn't do this every day, I would have had zero problems with Sonoma. I will say one thing. I can't figure out how to turn off this stupid feature. I can't figure it out.
You
and
still have bubbles.
So many ways
gestures.
that you can accidentally turn stuff on, and it's impossible. It eludes me.
I, on the other hand, have been on Sonoma since the day it shipped, and I have never seen one of those things, and I can put my thumb up and nothing will happen. So Chris is just unlucky this. Mitch.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, Chris. I'm using Sonoma 14.2.1, which is the latest on my M1. No problemo. I have an old cheese grater Mac that's stuck at Mojave. I'd love that to go faster, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I will say that pursuing this, it used to be when I was heavily in production, I would wait sometimes months if I had a lot of stuff going on before I upgraded. I've gotten a little lighter about that. Apple's upgrades have actually been very stable for me. Occasionally, some niche function or a piece of software will take a couple of weeks to catch up on a big upgrade, and maybe I'll have a problem with some peripheral or little app that I'm trying to run. But generally, they have done a pretty good job of figuring out not to ship software that truly does crash everything. So let's get to the next question.
And it's from Douglas Carmichael. The question is, when a broadcast truck or streaming company like 090 comes into a venue, what audio connections do they expect? Could they connect to the venue's Dante network, or would they expect MADI or AES on a snake?
At the risk of speaking on behalf of something I know nothing about, I will say I don't think they expect anything. And the reason I'm saying this is this. They understand that there will be some infrastructure when they arrive at a venue. But Alex is careful enough and has been doing this so long that my suspicion is that if he isn't absolutely sure he'll be able to interface instantly with everything they're providing, he's going to bring a backup or alternative so that the show goes on whether there's nothing there or whether the engineer is out sick today and they can't figure out where to connect. You know, that's really the magic of people who do high-quality production, is that there's very little they haven't seen before and have a contingency plan for, so that when the show goes on at 9 a.m., it goes on 9 a.m., no excuses. Mitchell?
Most of the newer trucks should probably use some digital standard like MADI or Dante, but mostly I see analog snakes on them. I mean, old-fashioned analog, and it's up to you to decide if you want to put it into some kind of a multiplexer to get it from there.
Yeah, I'm sure this is something that's being revised, and the truck people who do these broadcast trucks know what's coming. I mean, one of the things, if you go back and look at the fine folks from NBC who have been working with us and coming on and talking about the changeovers in broadcast and other things, they're working really hard to get into the 21st century as fast as a huge operation with hundreds of millions of dollars, probably billions in equipment investment, as fast as they can change under those kind of circumstances. Not an easy thing to rev your entire thing or turn it from analog to digital. It takes a long time. Courtney, your thoughts?
Yeah, most trucks and streaming companies come in self-contained. They have all their own microphones, et cetera, and the only thing they're really going to be sending to the venue is maybe a balanced line outputs over analog or digital if they request it, and usually just stereo or mono even for PA work, et cetera. So they usually, it depends on what they're asking for.
Yeah, it was really interesting. During the pandemic, in the kind of second year of the show, I think, John Idelson, one of our friends who was on the panel a lot back then, had worked with the Monterey Bay Convention Center. I guess he's local up there. And he was talking about working with them during the pandemic to kind of bring their facilities up into a more modern, more digital, more connected infrastructure. And it was really interesting to watch what was going on there. I think a lot of the big facilities have been going through the same thing, and where they are depends on how active they are and how much money they had to invest during the course of those downtimes and things like that. Let's see. Courtney got in, so I think Chris, go on to the next question.
Next one is in from Paul Wallace from Starlink Plaza, Texas. Google is sunsetting its podcast app in favor of YouTube Music as of April 2nd. You can move to the YouTube Music or to another app. What are your suggestions?
Chris Fenwick, start us off here.
Shocked, I'm telling you. shocked that Google would sunset a product of theirs. Who would have thunk it? I mean, listen, all of these giant companies are going to go away. There will be a day when you don't have Gmail. And if you don't imagine that, think of AOL, think of CompuServe, think of these things go away. You need to learn how to do some of this stuff on your own. Setting up a podcast isn't brain surgery. And I'll tell you that because I figured it out, and I'm not entirely good at this kind of stuff. So, you got to stay away from Google. It's a disaster of a company. It's horrible.
Jeffrey Powers.
I embrace the disaster. So basically, what's happening here is they're just putting all their eggs into one basket, and it's actually a very smart thing because you'll be able to seamlessly go from one thing. You can watch a YouTube video into a podcast, into a song, back into a YouTube video on the same platform, and they don't have to run with two different ecosystems to make it work. So I think it's a great thing to do. Moving everything over to another area that's tough. You know, as a podcast producer since, 2004, 2005. We've seen it all. We've seen many different ways to do it, and of course, the curmudgeon old podcasters will say, "Well, you need to have the RSS feed, and you need to have your own area to hold your podcast," which I do, but you don't need that nowadays because it's so much. We have in the United States, at least, we have the internet bandwidth, we have the devices, and we have something like YouTube that allows you to listen or watch whether your phone is turned on or in your pocket. So by doing that, they're going to start cornering the market, whereas companies like Spotify that were trying to try and corner the market but didn't realize how much that they didn't have in their app, they're just gonna be wondering why they're not working, and YouTube's still doing what it's doing, and that's because they've got an interface that works in so many different ways. It's just crazy.
Harshid, what are your thoughts? Whoops, you're muted.
This is basically all about business reorganization. So if we want to take a look at what that means, the teams that were working on the Google Podcast team probably got either moved to another department. And so when they have moved this to the YouTube side, well, what is podcasting anyway? What is the word pod? Leo Laporte invented the word netcast when Twit first launched way back in 2004. But if we look at what the entity of what podcasting means, it's this content that it's either by video or by audio, and now we're making famous, we want to have a video podcast. Well, what does it really mean, right? It's this content, a discussion people are having. So having the fact that they moved to YouTube Music or maybe just keep it in YouTube is a good deal because, again, it's just a business reorganization. And the teams that run it is YouTube, right? Google and YouTube are separate entities. Granted, it's Google's main company that owns YouTube, but they're two separate entities. So decision-making does happen differently. It is basically saying Google has dropped the responsibility of holding the responsibility of podcasting. Let's have YouTube team take care of that. So, I'm sure that there's wonderful third-party apps like Podcast Addict and this and that, and there's plenty of apps out there. But at the end of the day, what is the workflow that's going to make you feel comfortable by, you want to pick your favorite podcast, but then you want to go listen to some music, and then you want to go listen to, Chris Fenwick talking about something from way back when. You want to pull up 3-4 videos, but rather than running around trying to find different applications to do that, why not just have one application or two applications, in this case with YouTube and YouTube Music? So, the fact that we are all trying to move into a place where, oh my God, Google killed this and that, look at it in the business aspect. They're competing with TikTok right now, and look at what YouTube did. YouTube's like, subscribe, like my video, hi guys. All those words are evil words, in my opinion, because you waste time, and TikTok doesn't waste time. They get to the point, and so even if it is a podcast or, something like that, there's just about how you keep content energetic and how you keep your attention of your audience, because the algorithm equals your audience.
Mitchell?
Wow, that's a deep thought there, Harshit. Appreciate that. I just think it's a bunch of marketing hoo-ha with the consumer in the middle. I mean, it's very confusing. iTunes doesn't do this anymore, but now you got to use music. And when you launch a file, your Mac now decides what it's going to launch. I think it's not a good move for the consumer because it's confusing us.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think it's both a marketing move and a technical consolidation move because they have all the infrastructure in YouTube for handling streaming and music. Might as well just fold in podcasting. It's just like a different channel of music. And it also introduces people who may not have been using YouTube music to a whole new streaming platform.
Jeffrey, have a quick wrap-up?
Yeah, it's from what Harshid said. The reality is, think of podcast like Kleenex versus tissue type thing, Google versus search engines. Well, podcast is so generic that that you have to figure out where to go. And of course, YouTube embracing that. I have a feeling in the next 5 years, we might not even be calling it podcast. We might just be calling it YouTube.
Interesting. Let's move on to the next question.
From Paul Buchan in Columbus, Ohio, as 4K becomes more and more available for the end consumer, is HDR content far behind? And how long before we need to produce everything 4K and HDR?
One of the seminal questions of our transition times. Courtney Gooden, give us some thoughts.
Well, it depends. If you're a network broadcaster, maybe now is a good time to produce everything in 4K and HDR because a lot of the networks have that capability, and streaming networks especially. So not everybody, for years we maintained the 4:3 safe area after we transitioned into 16:9 HD. That went on for at least 10 years. So we're going to have to backward support the non-HDR and non-4K, the 1080p resolution for quite some time now, and everything may not be done in it. We still don't the broadcasters still don't broadcast in 4K. Only streaming and satellite can deliver that stuff, and maybe cable. But for the free air broadcast, it's going to be quite a while before everything's HDR or 4K.
I think I agree with you. It seems so almost schizophrenic to me that the technology in our industry is so rapidly advancing. I mean, it's hardly a month goes by where I don't see some piece of tech news come by and I go, wow, that's another advance over what used to be. And then on the other hand, I see a lot of companies and people and just general thinking that is kind of like, nah, we're happy where we are. We're not quite ready to take the big leap. And it's kind of a weird filtering system for me. Who's talking about what's coming and who's desperately trying to not have to spend the money to move from where they were to where they need to be. And some of those investments, or maybe in your particular vertical not making the investment, will turn out to be the long-term strategy. May you live in interesting times, as they say. Let's go on to the next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Viera, Florida. OBSBOT has released a plugin for Stream Deck PTZ camera control. What are your thoughts?
Jeffrey Powers.
So OBSBOT was able to, you could always control on a Stream Deck since I think it was March using and hopefully I get this right acronym, OSC command. This is just basically an app that gives you all those buttons. Plus, it also gives you the option for the tail air. So if you're running it remotely through the network rather than through a USB cable, I believe that's where that app will really come in. But it's just basically an app to give you more easier button control at that point.
Let's sneak on to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asking, what flexible audio processing and distribution platforms have you used? I'm currently working through the QSC Q-SYS Level 1 training, but I'm interested in other products with the same drag-and-drop design interface.
Mitchell Hill, what's been happening for you in audio drag and drop?
I think they all pretty much have some kind of nodal interface on them. I'm going way back to the old PV Media Matrix. Remember that? It was the first time I ever saw this, and it's a very, very cool way to do things. Then now you're going to see it in Crestron and Symmetrix and all those guys. So it'd be a matter of which one doesn't have that.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's been interesting to see how inheritable metadata, which is basically kind of what drag and drop is in a fundamental sense, has gotten into so much of modern design because it's just real efficient. In fact, I wish it was more prevalent out there. There's still things where I'm having to open things, copy things that I would imagine could be reduced into a simple metadata string and paste it onto the new thing. And sometimes it doesn't work that way, and it always confuses me or it makes me a little bit, this is more work than it really needs to be. So fingers crossed for the future. Next question.
Jeff Cohen from Miami Beach, Florida, asking, thoughts on the visuals used in this audio-only Apple TV Plus show, Calls?
I haven't seen that, and I didn't get a chance to look at that beforehand. It sounds really interesting. So there's audio-only Apple TV Plus show. There must be something visual since it's on Apple TV. Mitch Hill, have you had a chance to look through this?
It's visually very strange, and for me, I'm saying it's my opinion, very distracting. It can't hold my attention for more than 10 minutes, so I kind of gave up on it, but it's worth checking out.
Can you describe just a little bit for the audience what they might be seeing in this? Is it patterns or colors?
It's like a waveform and different styles of it. As I recall, it's been so long since I looked at it.
I think Courtney's bringing it up. There we go. And it looks like a little kind of graphic design interface of the waves of maybe that's tied. That's interesting. On one of the...
I was just going to say it's
ahead,
if you have that one of those visualizer apps on your computer, it's like if you're just clicking through all the different visualizations on that visualizer app. It's actually more than that because it's obviously edited and they're using some special visual effects to cut pieces together and make them audio visualizations on each side for each caller, et cetera, et cetera. But it's basically that kind of stuff and popping the names up over the people that are talking so that you know which waveform that you're seeing visualized applies to which person is speaking. But
it's interesting that they're working on this. When you're mostly listening to something, what's the visual? And I'm reminded of the screensavers on Apple TV, those incredible slow motion, very, very, very high resolution drifts across major cities. And I've had people when I've had guests over and we've been hanging out, and for some reason the TV goes into that screensaver mode. They go, "What's that? Can I find that channel?" I think it's really interesting when people come up with content that is incidental to the task at hand and do it really, really well. So I haven't seen this. I didn't know about this before, but it looks interesting. Jeffrey, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it actually came out 2 years ago, and it was during that whole point where everybody was trying to experiment with, well, what if we do this? What if we do this? So Apple basically experimented. What if we put a show on the TV where you don't actually have to watch the TV to get into? And so that's why they have, the little waveforms. So if you do want to watch the TV, you're more than welcome to look at the waveforms. And each episode was a little bit different in how they presented it. And I thought it was a pretty good experiment for what they were doing. And there are some people that love it. There's some people that don't love it. But the bottom line is if you walked away and went to make a sandwich or something like that, you didn't need to look at the TV to see what just happened, because they would actually try to explain it as best as they can, or if they wanted to hide you to what was going on, they wouldn't explain it. So you could keep engaged and go from there. So the fact that they didn't make another one, I don't know if that meant that this was a success or not, but it's something that I've seen even in YouTube now that has really grown. A lot of these black screen evening, sleep type things where they do 8 hours of rain or anything like that. So it has built a genre, just not on Apple, on YouTube and in different means.
Is it narrative content? Is it someone telling stories, or is it just?
No, yeah, it's just like
what's
it's like
the
a radio
conceit of
show.
it?
Think of it like a radio show with a little bit of visual that you don't need to look at if you don't want to.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out. Courtney, you had thoughts?
Yeah, there's a plug-in for Chrome that will give you this. You type Control Q, I think, to bring it up, and it'll do this audio visualizer. It's just a plug-in for anything that you go to, any web page you go to that has audio, and it will give you this visualizer in the browser. So You can do that if you like to do that and play your favorite podcast. If it doesn't have visuals in it, yeah, put that up. Hit Control
There
Q.
you go.
It's a plug-in.
Mitch, you had a thought? Another closer?
Yeah, it's interesting. Jeffrey brought up the visualizer that's there to relax you. I think it's called Calm, C-A-L-M. Might be calm.com. I don't know. It is kind of visually interesting, but it's more interesting as the sound. So if you have to have your TV on, I guess that Call Show or Calm are the things you want to have going.
And maybe it prevents burn-in for people who don't want just a big logo sitting up in the middle of their TV or something like that. Who knows? All right, let's move on to our next question.
And it's Paul Wallace from Starlink Plaza, Texas, asking, AI-powered voice cloning company ElevenLabs is now a unicorn. Should actors and celebs be worried?
Yeah, they're always going to be worried. They've been worried since the first actor got on stage and the understudy said, I can do your job. It is an interesting thing. You know, as somebody who works in voiceover a lot, we're talking about this a ton, and we are going to be for a long time. It's really a fascinating transition. I've got a lot of thoughts about it, but let's let other people kind of weigh in, and I'll say something here at the end of that. Let's start with Mitchell and go to Courtney.
As somebody that makes a living out of voiceover work, I'm officially going to state right now, mea culpa to AI. I'll submit, and I'll submit to ElevenLabs, and I'll have a Mitch setting that maybe somebody would use.
Courtney?
Yeah, if you want to see how good this has gotten and how it could be used to the detriment of people, and we never get political on this show, so I won't mention what it is, but if you watch the Jimmy Kimmel Show opening monologue last night, you will see an example of how good it can get and how creepy it can be.
Yeah, it's interesting. So as people here know, I've been involved in audiobooks for the last year or two, and I've been spending time paying attention to that. So in the AI narration world, that's one of the areas, because it takes so long to track live an entire full-length novel that the companies who are doing that are spending a lot of time thinking about, can we get AI to do this? And because of that, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about what is it that I can bring to the table that the AI voice can't. And the one thing that I've landed on is just thinking to myself, okay, if I wanted to direct an AI voice somehow to change nuance and to change the way it interpreted a sentence or a paragraph or a character or something, what would I need? And I've come to the conclusion that I would need a markup language of some sort for emotion and emphasis and those kind of things in order to turn something that was computer generated into something more that I wanted it to be. I haven't seen anybody talk about or write about that kind of markup language. And as I thought more about it, I thought, well, if there was such a thing, if there was a markup language you could put into your text stream to indicate characterization or emphasis or mood or emotion, you know, angrily, he said. Well, what does that sound like? How angry should we get a slider to say from mildly miffed to insanely upset? And who's going to go through and do these things to perfect it rather than letting the algorithm just do it? It's an interesting topic, and I'm still on the fence about, I think there's a possibility that for a lot of voice work and a lot of the kind of basic narrative where emotion and meaning doesn't have the key information delivery role, this will sweep the industry really quickly. I mean, you don't really care whether it's a human being reading the television instructions to how to reset the channel indicators. You just want the information. So I think that stuff's going to go away from the voiceover industry real quick. But I know a lot of people listen for the aesthetic enjoyment of a good writer's tempo, mood, and the emotions and connection that the characters could potentially have to the audience. And I think that pushes us more towards somebody having to mark up the emotional piece of this. And I think that's going to be a long time coming. I might be wrong. We'll see. Mitchell?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think what's going to happen is it's going to be a one and done for using a AI version of your voice. And then there's always going to be needs for direction where you're directing words and paragraphs and things like that.
Absolutely. And it is time we have to make our crossover into our second hour. I want to thank everybody for participating in the first hour of this. We've got all sorts of things that are going to be coming up here in the next hour. Our special guests will be here in just a couple of minutes. And between now and then, we've got a really interesting week coming this week. Don't forget that every day we have kind of a different little theme here. Squares TV also is happening later today, as is the Isadora Lab. Those are things you should take care. Tomorrow, phase versus polarity, our audio day. We're going to be demystifying those related but separate concepts. Thursday, Michael Cioni is going to be here, CEO of Strata, formerly with Adobe, Frame.io, Panavision, one of our favorite people. So we're really looking forward to the show, and we'll be right back. Welcome to our second hour. Pretty much everybody is aware that one of the hottest areas of production right now is virtual environments. Technologies like Unreal Engine are transforming everything in the entertainment industry. We can kind of all see it coming. Unreal and attendant technologies are increasingly being used in filmmaking, advertising, training, just really about everything. Today, we're going to be talking with Final Pixel CEO Michael McKenna and executive producer Hanah Draper. Final Pixel has facilities in London and New York City. They're a global virtual production house for film, TV, and advertising, and they specialize in end-to-end virtual production with LED walls, visual art department, an on-set virtual production and training facility. They're very involved with tech like Unreal Engine and the almost limitless possibilities it's bringing to the virtual production space and where this whole thing is heading in Hollywood for creative content and beyond. So welcome, Michael, and welcome, Hanah. Good to have you here on Office Hours.
Thank you for the introduction. It's very nice to be here.
It's great to have you. Let's start with you, Michael. Very quickly, can you tell us a little bit about Final Pixel, how it kind of came to being and what it's there for?
Yes, so Final Pixel, we're a creative production house. We're an innovation in filmworks that specializes in virtual production. We, formed during the pandemic. We were, formed out of me and my co-founders that saw the potential and opportunity of working with gaming engines and working with LED wall as a tool on the stage in order to produce advertising, but also film and TV content in a completely different way. We were just completely, it's became a kind of a cliche now. The Mandalorian was on. We were watching the behind the scenes to the Mandalorian. It was April 2020. We'd just gone into a major national lockdown in the UK and in the US. And, we had time to watch TV, and we watched the Mandalorian, and myself, in the UK, I was engaging with this behind the scenes on Disney Plus, and I was just blown away by the what Jon Favreau and everyone had created on that stage, and started to the cogs got whirring, and I started to believe that actually this could be a technology that really changes everything. It really makes production better for producers, but it could also really open up the creative possibilities, in terms of what we can do in film and TV on a stage. And so it just so happened at the same time, we were doing a regular family Zoom. Do you remember when, I don't know, some people during the pandemic, they had like a Sunday family Zoom, everyone gets together and you maybe do a quiz or something like that. Mm-hmm. Well, myself and my family and my brother, who's based in Los Angeles, were on a family Zoom around about that time, talking about what we've been watching, talking about The Mandalorian, talking about LED stages all of a sudden. And my brother was saying, "Oh, look, I think this is actually amazing technology that we could use in advertising." He'd been running an agency for 20 years doing advertising, felt like this was something that they could apply for their clients. And I was saying at the same time, wow, I've just been having the exact same thoughts. Isn't that wild? I think we could use this in a big way for film, TV production. And so from there, we're like, why don't we just get in, have a go? And we funded some demos in the UK and in the US. And then before we knew it, we'd set up a company, and we're now specializing in doing this for a living. So yeah, it really all came off the back of, the sort of change that the pandemic, pushed upon us all.
Fabulous. Hanah, as executive producer there, what have you been seeing, and what are you most interested in this new world?
I think that if I'd known about virtual production when I was working on the jobs that I was before all of this innovational technology had started, I would have produced them very differently. I've had shoots where we've had to burn down a wall and have a completely different production path in order to execute them. And I think now we have all of these tools available to us, so we can be shooting in multiple different countries on the same day, not having to fly from destination to destination to do it. There are tons of pain points that it solves. So I'm very excited to be part of that journey.
I think we've all been watching with rapt anticipation the incredible pace of development with things like Unreal Engine and that kind of thing. Can you talk about what you're seeing on the horizon and what you're most excited about now in terms of the current implementations of these technologies?
I mean, on the horizon, we're seeing everything advance, basically. This is the thing. When we started the company, we knew that it had potential because all of the component parts, all of the convergent technologies that allowed this to be possible could only get better. We could see that graphics engines are going to get better, real-time engines are going to get better. The sort of, the way the workflows, how it works, the LED panels that were designed for live events will get better because people will start designing them for virtual production. The camera tracking will get better because it's camera tracking that was designed for a different use case. When we started this, we were like, this is amazing now as a convergence of lots of third-party things bolted together. But now what we're seeing, and this is the most exciting bit actually, is that design is happening for virtual production now. So, LED manufacturers, Sony have brought out a new LED recently that has an anti-reflective glare, for example, so that it stops the DOP spilling too much light onto the wall. We've seen obviously the advances in Unreal Engine year on year. 5.3. We're now working in 5.3, and we're seeing the benefits of the photorealism that's came with Unreal 5. It's huge. The specifics within that, working with things like Lumen, which is real-time lighting, working with a method of lighting in real time, which is optimized out of the packet kind of thing. This, just a year or so ago was like unheard of. We didn't have this kind of a tool. Not only the photorealism of Unreal 5, but also these tools that allow us to relight in real time and maintain frame rate. So the combination of all these individual changes is, I think, what's really going to elevate virtual production into the next kind of phase, which is improved photorealism, improved, tie between the foreground and the background, improved workflows, because the technology is there to make it easier for the film TV professionals to use these, the crew, the DOP, the camera assistants, the way that it's becoming more accepted and more understood as a technology is ultimately going to be its benefit. And that's the stuff, for me anyway, I don't know, that I find really exciting, is this new sort of way of doing things that's really starting to bed in.
Because we've done it a few times now. We've learned how to produce it. We've learned where needs the risk mitigation and where needs to be, where we can find the efficiencies, where we don't need to be so concerned on the workflow, because of actually we've tried and tested it a few times and it's worked very nicely. We've been able to establish as a company what we prefer using and how we use them. So I think that the production element of it is, for me, I would be a little bit biased about it, but it's really key in making sure that we're doing it really well.
And that ultimately just means it's really good for our clients, right?
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's what excites us the most is when we come off a shoot and the client and whoever we're working with says, wow, that was amazing. That's blown my mind. And it's produced something which is incredible that we could never have done otherwise. And that link between the technology, the production value, and then the client being delighted with the results is the thing that makes this the most exciting, and is only going to feed more and more development and more technology advances that will make it easier and better, and more and more use cases.
And actually gasping, the clients actually gasp in a very positive way. And that's great, especially as a producer. You're very pleased when a client is that impressed by the beauty that they've seen.
Doesn't take a genius to see that much of the industry is going in this direction. As people get more and more interested in this and want to build careers in this, what are the things you guys offer, and what would you suggest to somebody who's maybe starting their career and wants to get involved in this, wants to learn this, but the information is out there, but it's so diffused and so unfocused. It takes such a long time to kind of self-train yourself into something as huge as this. Do you have initiatives and things like that that help people with that?
Yeah, I mean, so Final Pixel is our brand. It covers a lot of the things that we do. As you say, we're very involved in lots of different areas. There's like three main parts of our business, if you like. One is the production, so we're running virtual production from end to end. The other is actually the virtual art department. So we've been building a world building team. So World Builders does virtual production, real-time content for LED walls, but also we've been building content using real-time engines for all sorts of different, transmedia applications. So the sort of technology is applicable to different verticals, if you like. And so what we've learned from, building that end-to-end pipeline, building the virtual art team, is that number one, there's like not enough people out there that can do it. And so we've got demand for teams, demand for highly skilled individuals, and we just could not fill those spaces. And so back in 2021, I wanted to launch an academy. So take the kind of education, the approach that we were doing, just naturally as a business at that point, which was sharing what we're doing, sharing the information and the new learnings with different people, from crew to producers to clients. I wanted to turn that under an umbrella, which was like a means for being able to put more structure around that education to fill the gap, as you described. Like the gap that 2 years ago was even greater than it was now in terms of access and information and skilled knowledge and experts that could actually take you through how to approach a virtual production. And so we launched the academy, as I say, about 2 years ago, and since then, we've been building an online space, for an online academy for people to go to and take courses which are instructor-led, or they can do them asynchronous. You can do it in your own time, but also to apply for some of the various courses that we have that run in person. And we're doing these courses all over the world, really. So we've been focused in the UK with universities, but we've also been doing in-person courses in New York, Los Angeles. I just came back from Norway, where we've been up there working with a new LED hub in Norway. We've had training, taken over to China. We've been working with people all over the world, basically, taking the knowledge that we've gained and trying to package that up in a way that gives people a chance to get started. So naturally, like, my answer to that, your question would be going to finalpixelacademy.com and like start there and start looking at what's available and what's starting to become available there. It's still really early days for us in that world as well. We've got like a huge trajectory of courses and improvements and things that are going to come down the line, and partnerships and all sorts of amazing stuff to kind of help put this education in the hands of the people that ultimately want to scale up and want to become, involved in virtual production. So, what we often recommend with that, the starting place is try out Unreal Engine, get an introduction to Unreal Engine. It's free, Unreal Engine's still free. You can download it, have a play, get yourself familiar with how it works. And that will start to let you play with this concept of real time, if you're not familiar with it, and real time engines, and what that really means and why that's powerful. Because I feel like once you've figured that out, then actually virtual production makes a lot more sense. Once you understand what real time is, then you sort of get why this is so exciting and why this is so different.
Before we I think you have something to show us, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of your work. But before that, Hanah, can you give me a little bit of help in terms of what do you think someone who's new, who wants to get into this field, should look at first? Are there some core skills? When you made the transition from kind of the old school production into this new world, what were the things you wish you'd known coming into that?
I think what has been really key for me personally is to understand all of the stages of the actual virtual art department development, understanding the necessity to get on the same page with the creatives. So if you say to me, hey, please, can you build us some fire? We need to shoot in a fire escape. What I have in my mind and what you have in your mind for fire is going to be subjective and different. So we've had to really home in on making sure we've got a clear way of getting that information out of the creative's mind, and then allowing us to translate that information to our artists. So we've crafted a very detailed way of doing that process. So we have creative reviews. We kind of start at like an ideation design stage, then we move through different reviews, and your first creative review, you would be able to make broad decisions and brushstrokes across what you want to change and do. And then basically it becomes more detail focused as the process comes on. But I think that initially, when I first started producing virtual production, was something that I had to really lean on our VAD supervisor to be able to get an understanding of that. Now I think I understand more about what we need in the process that is essential, and what's a nice to have, and what is it's a better way from a production point of view.
I think the first time I ever looked at Unreal, that's what struck me. Somebody had to build this entire world. You said world building. This is a complex and time-consuming process. It takes a lot of brains and a lot of people working to do this to get the results we see on there. Do you have some kind of reel that you can show us?
Yeah, we've got a reel somewhere. I think should be able to play that, and we can talk
let's see if we can cut to that.
Play by the rules.
And fascinating. You know, always when I watch something like this, it strikes me that art directors and people there's this interface between real and hyper-real that people are having to navigate kind of in the aesthetic part of this. Suddenly you can build anything or put anybody in anything. And so I think it's going to be an interesting thing to see over the next few years how different directors and different stakeholders approach that. What needs to be real? What needs to be hyper-real? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I think that what's, again, really exciting about what happens next in this whole virtual production universe is the first couple of years really has been people putting together the technology, trying to get it to work, trying to create things, trying to do it for the first time. I think what we're starting to see now, and I would name check, for example, the NYU Tisch Martin Scorsese virtual production stage in New York, for example, is like being, I know the team there, and they're really pushing on this narrative, which is to be based around storytelling. So, to teach virtual production, but teach it in a way which is storytelling first. And I think that's what we're going to see, is that directors and production designers who've maybe had their first dabble over the last year or so working on feature films or working in long form TV or other, even advertising, are going to start to think about it from a very early stage in the process, much earlier than they did probably on the first shoot they done, and then use the production technology to actually craft the story in a way that wouldn't have been done otherwise. And I think that's what's really exciting, because we're working with a game engine where anything can be programmed into it, anything at all. Whereas the first wave of VP has been like, here's a backdrop, here's an environment. Okay, here we are in front of an environment. And then that's largely it. And look at that. Look at that. Now we can make fireworks. I don't know where that came from. Someone heard me.
When anything is possible, everything is possible. It's
that's
very cool.
You don't just need a game engine, right? You just need Zoom. But the beauty is that, as you saw in some of the reel there, you can take any data. So like the motion capture data we use to drive that real time, that was a fun demo that we done as a bit of proof of concept on driving a real time character. That kind of thing. Like people, once the creative teams, the directors, you say, production designers, and everyone else involved starts to really get their head around the possibilities of the technology and starts to engage with it from an earlier stage, I really feel like we'll see some quite unique forms of filmmaking start to evolve out of it. to sort of predict what those exactly are yet is kind of tricky, but it's definitely going to be used in other creative ways and in a more crafty way than we realize at the moment. And, you know, for example, you talked about hyperrealism. I know the film Poor Things. I don't know if you've seen any of the footage of that yet, but Poor Things used, you know, they actually used miniatures on set on a virtual production stage to create a very, you know, ultimately it was quite a stylized look that fit with the overall film. But again, that was shot with the sort of the design in mind. You know, like the DOP knew what he wanted to achieve and set about creating the right size and shape of LED wall in the right space to achieve that creative. And I think that's what we're going to start to see even more of, this like much more bespoke approach to it, where it's like, well, what do we need to tell the story? Not, oh, I need to go to this virtual production stage and shoot on a wall that's this size by this size and shoot this thing here. It's more and more going to be like, well, how do I put together the technology in a certain way to achieve this creative?
Yeah, that's been a fascinating thing. Emma Stone's new movie, and there's so much buzz about the visual approach to it, along with everything else about that. An exciting thing. Some of our panelists want to get in some questions before we open it up to our audience questions, and we have a long list already. So, Mitchell, start us off.
Michael, Hanah, thanks for being here. It's a fascinating subject. You put all these pieces together, and there's so much technology wrapped up in it, and maybe a little old-fashioned storytelling. What is the one thing that is moving so fast it's hard to keep up with you're most interested in?
It's a good question. What's moving the fastest? Yeah, I think... I mean, obviously, like Unreal is moving fast. Everything's moving fast, if you but like Unreal's moving fast. The changes in Unreal, like we go from one version to another so fast now, and so the environments that we just created in the previous version are now like superseded, and we have to like make changes and make sure they're compatible and all that sort of thing. That's one thing with the iterations of Unreal,
and what it's capable of as well. Because I used to say, like, if there's lots of foliage, probably it wouldn't be best for this, or you know, water and now foliage looks amazing in Unreal. Water looks outstanding. The way that it can react. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the natural way for a conversation to go on this topic is like AI. Let's start talking about AI.
I feel that's where we were probably.
I think we have a question about that coming up. Yeah,
yeah, but we're like, I don't know. It's weird to think this. This is me just thinking live about it, but. With virtual production and with the optimization and the creation of environments and everything, like there's a real craft in that already. There's a craft in creating something which is optimized and photorealistic. And there's a craft in our filmmaking way of taking a script or taking a creative idea and working with a producer or a creative to realize their vision. And while AI is exciting for me, like at the same time, I feel like that nature of being bespoke and being able to sort of tweak and shape and mold and to be the vision exactly of what a director or someone has is still quite a bit off yet. And it sort of needs very much that sort of human influence and human creation to improve it and get it to the point, you know, particularly when you're looking at the types of productions that we work on that require a very specific, you know, approach. And I think that while AI is exciting, we're working on all sorts of different things to do with AI and development, and that is moving quickly, and there's got lots of exciting things to it. But there's like I say, there's still just this core 3D game engine approach, real time movement, which is moving at a pace as well in parallel to all this, which is equally exciting, if not more so, because of the applications of it.
I'd say that what's maybe not fast, maybe that's not the right term for it, but during the last couple of years, we've definitely been quick at working out our efficiencies. Mm-hmm. So what I would say has changed pretty quickly, just because we've had to do it with slight blinkers on, because it's new technology and it's new workflows and it's new pipelines. But say, for example, the first shoot that I produced, we had risk mitigation here, there, and everywhere to make sure that, because the last thing we want to do is for it to not succeed as a project. So we put in different risk mitigation areas. And then now when I budget up, it doesn't look anywhere near like that. Like, we don't need the techno crane in on this day. We don't need the grip, therefore, for the 2 grips for these amount of days. So what has happened is we've been able to reduce down our costs, reduce down our schedule. And so the evolution of that side of things has moved quite quickly, bearing in mind we've only been doing it for, 3-4 years.
And that's very exciting that the efficiencies of scale and technology are actually affecting bottom line numbers so that you can do more with less investment than you could before. That's a powerful change motivator in any business circumstance.
But money and time.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's true.
Money and time.
Well, yeah, there's an equivalency between the amount of time and the amount of money, isn't there? Harshid, you had a question?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on today. And just full disclosure, I suffer from vision loss, but all of this stuff is really exciting, especially with Unreal. I remember working on Bryce as a youngster, and just the fact of where does accessibility fit with your organization? There's multitudes of disabilities, so to speak, but where would accessibility fit for yours? Audio description could be one thing, people with hearing loss and other things. So where does that sit for you guys?
I mean, that's a really great question. Thank you for asking, because I'll talk about it and then I'll let Hanah explain a bit as well. So I think quite recently we've always had these themes in our organization around some of the main, I guess, sort of key things that are coming from virtual production. And I'm finding it hard to describe this because we found it hard to kind of actually piece it together. Like, we've found that there's a big sustainability advantage to working with virtual production, for example. And we've been trying to find ways to gather the information on that and share it and, push that area forward. But we've also found that social mobility has had a huge impact from virtual production. We've had teams working in remote areas like Dundee in Scotland or a little village in Surrey, literally operating a stage in Hollywood from their computer at home. So, and then very recently, when we knew there was something else about accessibility with VP, and we sort of hadn't really pieced it together until very quite recently. There was a piece of research done in Wales, and the guys there sort of identified this clear overlap between accessibility, i.e., in a studio or working with this kind of technology remotely, overlaps with the social mobility element that I just talked about, and the sustainability side. And there's this interesting intersection of all those things that's common. And it's common to virtual production, and it's and what we're feeling at the moment is that we've been identifying all these touch points, but we have to kind of bring it together and make it clear that this is part of what we do as a company as well. This is really what we think about a lot and what we talk about. And I'll let Hanah fill in a bit on that as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this subject is particularly dear to me. So I have relapsing, remitting multiple sclerosis, and I had some issues with, same as you. Is that right? Is that what you're saying? The same.
Yeah, I have MS too, so.
Yeah, so we and from vision loss is one of the things that I've had suffering with, especially in my left eye, and so I am not the right person to check for artifacts on the volume or anything like that. However, the whole process that we've been going through over the last couple of years has really drawn attention to the fact that you can have people from all walks of life, no matter what their backgrounds are or what those situations that they're having to overcome is. And it's a ton easier to shoot on location in a studio than it is to shoot on location. So it means that we're able to nurture and include way more demographic of people with, different disability with for across the board, diversity and inclusion is something super, super key to us. And we're working out how we can bring more people, because, it diversifies our talent pool. The more open we can be, the more we can succeed. Everybody has different experiences and they can bring more to creativity. So I think over the next couple of years, we'll see some different stories coming out because we've allowed those, different demographics to be involved.
We've probably been quite, we've not led on it so much in the last couple of years because we've been really trying to embed ourselves in this industry and get the workflows right and everything. But definitely, from the first time we set up the company, one of the big reasons why I wanted to make a change was I kind of really felt that why does production have to be such a difficult place for everyone. Why is it so difficult? Here's a technology that actually might make it more accessible and more easier for people to produce. Like, why does everyone have to give up so much of their life to make films? You know, like that has become a thing. The industry is really going a certain way on that, and it only seems to be getting worse. And I was seeing that in the production company I was at previously, and I just felt that maybe this is something we don't know yet, but we really think it could be. And as we've gone on, that's formed, and like, you know, as we've built this team, we've found that that's a theme that's so common across the whole team, and that we really want to make that change. And you know, from the first day when Hanah came on the stage, you brought Honey, then you brought your daughter onto the set. And
yeah, I know it was a wild year for me. I went back to work after I had Honey, who's my daughter, bear in mind, when I was 8 weeks postpartum. So I was like on stage producing with my baby. But we were in a studio, so she can go and be in a room offside for a bit, have a nap, and then come back out again. And it was controlled environments. And then, like, I don't know, it was the day before her year birthday was when my symptoms of MS like reared their head. And but then we had a job with Discovery at the time, and I was producing that. But because we were in a controlled environment, I could put in place the things that I needed. Like, I had some issues with my mobility and with my eyesight, but because we were in a situation where we could put in practice things that would support me in that environment, I was able to produce the shoot. And I think that that from a personal level, it means a huge amount, because it's meant that I haven't had to change my life. But from an industry point, like it opens up the opportunity for so many people. And I think that we should only be pushing that forward.
Outstanding.
Thank you so much for that pleasure.
Courtney, you had a thought?
I had a couple of questions. I noticed that you have offices in London, New York, and Los Angeles. Do you maintain virtual volumes in each of those locations that are turnkey, or?
Yeah, we're kind of unusual in this business, because when we started off, we had an amazing first year. We had the money to set up a stage somewhere, and we thought about it, and we thought, where would we put a stage? Like, we couldn't decide if it was London, New York, or LA. Like, where would we build the first Final Pixel, virtual production stage? And what we decided pretty early on at that point was that actually the growth of a business and the growth of virtual production is not going to be predicated on owning some assets of LED. It's going to be predicated on having the best teams and the best talent and the best workflows. So rather than invest in a stage or stages, we've been investing in people for the last 3 years. We've been bringing on teams. We've been bringing on all sorts of different people to create a structure and a workflow that allows us actually to do jobs in all of those locations very efficiently, without having a standing stage with a fixed result, with a kind of fixed mentality to it. And that really comes from being, producers and coming from a world of putting together the right thing for the job. So instead of having like a big, big old singing, old dancing volume that we try and invite everyone into, we went down the route of having smaller labs in these locations. So for quite a while, and in New York, we had a lab at NYU. In LA, we had like a private stage for a while that we had in partnership with a company. And then in London, we had various different lab setups over the course of the last few years, and we've still got one here we're in at the moment. And that approach really was about focusing on workflow, like putting that money on the people, the talent, build the workflow, so that we can now apply that in any location. Because globally, the technology is a commodity. Like, we can, work with partners in every place to put up a stage. And I think what we're seeing now, is that method and that logic being proven quite true. Is we've seen stages go up, and then quite quickly they've realized they couldn't maintain it long enough, because particularly the big large stages, we know that V stage at Leavesden, for example, came down. We know that there's some of the other big volumes in the UK didn't stay up. The one in Berlin, for example, there's been a kind of like pattern of big stages going up and then coming down again, because maintaining that throughput, particularly now at this early stage of development, is very hard. And then if you did go down that route, what I felt we would do is focus on trying to cover an overhead of a stage rather
Right.
than focusing on how we create the best production value, which is what this again, like this is where we get most excited about this kind of thing. It's like creating the best stuff we ever could, like, you know, working with clients and producers and, you know, everyone to like really think outside the box. How could we do this a different way? How could we make this the best we can for the time and budget, you know, and the creative that we've got? And I think that what that's proven is, yeah, we've been able to do that a lot more, and we've got really good at that process of production and producing these shoots. So
last week, for example, so last Saturday, we popped up a volume which was 6 meters high and 12 meters wide, but then the camera move needed to the move needed just a little bit more space to the right of the screen. So then we put some panels in like a little step down like that, so that it would fit what was necessary for the creative. And then it went up on the Saturday and it came down on the following Saturday. And then we moved it to then pop it up again. And, you know, that's what we were doing for the first year of this technology, because there weren't existing standing stages. So we had to throw up a volume and bring a volume down again. And we've gotten really good at working out those pipelines. Not to say that sometimes it would be better to just go and shoot it in a existing stage, but because we have the option to work out what's best for the budget, for the schedule, for the creative, for the you know, for the project, we can do a bit of both essentially.
And Courtney, you had another one?
Yeah, and I guess that allows you the flexibility to be setting up a stage and another, you know, and the volume in a second stage while you're still shooting in a different stage to have overlaps. Because I know a lot of production schedules get pushed occasionally because of star availability or something, and that can be that can cost quite a lot if your stage is suddenly shuttered for some reason and you can't use it for anything else because it's set up for a certain production.
Yeah, and like depending on what you need, like the two key things are like weight bearing and are the right power. So if you have those two things, we can pretty much put a volume wherever you like. Like we've put in and pulled out like walls LED in universities. We've done them in studios, obviously, but if you wanted it in a mall, we could do that too. Like it's you know, easy.
Do you use different
Not easy,
subcontractors, or have you assembled like a 40-foot semi that has a portable volume in it? You just truck it to wherever you need it and set it up.
Yeah, we have trusted partners. We've got a trusted network, and that's important because, like I say, the technology is a commodity, but then the teams you work with and the teams that have to be part of how we deliver a service or a value to our clients and how we get the best results means that we have to know that we can trust who we're working with. So we've really built up, you know, some really great partners in that sense that want to help bring us, you know, the tools that we need to meet the creative. Again, it goes back to that. Like what we're great at is listening to what the client or the producer or whoever we're working with has in their mind. Then they're telling us their problems, they're telling us the things that they're trying to solve. And then we listen to that, and then we translate that into, okay, well, for that, you don't need a curved wall. You need a square wall, and then, you know, you need this size, and then you need this technology. You don't need those render nodes. You need this kind of render node because actually you're going to be running plates on this or something, you know, and then we're going to run it with Assimilate instead of running Unreal Engine, for example. They also say, oh, and it's got a motion control movement. Okay, well, if you're using motion control, then that changes it again. And actually, this is the setup you need. So we then like bespokely get value in every like sub-department of virtual production, if you like. And that might mean a number of different partners that we work with in order to supply the best technology solution to each element of that. And it means that we can be completely agnostic as well, in that sense that we are completely agnostic. We've got no relationships with any technology manufacturer or individual stages as such. So it means that the client, whoever we're working with, knows that we just give them the best insight and advice based on our experience. And I think that's pretty valuable right now, particularly when the risk is high on working with this kind of technology.
And I think the only thing that I would add to that, which is arguably the most important, is that we only work with nice people. And so when we're working with nice people, it's a nice environment. And so when you're in a nice environment, you can be more creative. And so your creative sings, your crew are happy. And yeah, like, and hardware.
I'm going to stitch that on a sampler for myself. Only work with nice people. This would be a really good idea. We have a ton of questions, and I've been neglectful. I should have gotten to them earlier, but our viewing audience has a lot of things to ask. So, Mitch, let's dive into this as quick as we can.
First one is from Andy Kokendorfer from Viera, Florida. Andy asks, what is AI's role in virtual production?
Which of you wants to grab that?
I can take it. I'll start.
My first bit would be, it's really good for concepting. You can carry on.
Yes. So what's its role today versus what's its role going to be? Maybe there's two things. So role today, I think immediately ChatGPT and some of these Gen AI tools have been great for like early development phases. So, you need to quickly produce a concept that is, discussed in a meeting. Like, yeah, we can very quickly produce a 2D style that someone looks at and says, okay, well, that's interesting. Let's maybe use that to help inform the environment build that we're doing. So that's not new. Like, that's been about a year now. We've been doing that sort of thing. Where does it go next? Well, there's AI tools like Kubrick, which is spelled Cuebric. Kubrick is a specific platform that's been developed for virtual production as well as other use cases. And what it's doing is taking that Gen AI mod, so the say like a Midjourney or DALL-E, style. You've created a generative 2D image. What Kubrick is allowing us to do is quickly segment that into layers, and then import it into Unreal Engine, and then project it onto the LED wall. So we get a kind of 2.5D effect. So, AI is helping us produce, really very fast, off-the-shelf, library type environments that could be used for virtual production. And I think that, at the moment it's not quite live yet for a lot of our clients because, there's various sort of legal technicalities to work through when obviously we're dealing with AI. And also the other thing is, as I mentioned earlier, the kind of like the bespoke nature of production is that it's very rarely the thing that you generate is going to be the thing everyone wants. Like, you have to work through and tweak and perfect. So in the future, I'm sure that will change. And in the future, we're going to have more and more 3D Gen AI. There's some great examples out there already of 3D models that can now be done with AI. And I think it will definitely help speed up some of these like concepting and build phases. In the short term, we'll see that like improve the timeline a bit and improve some of that kind of say like virtual art early pre-production. But I don't think it's ever going to replace the craft needed from an artist to be able to deliver what is needed for the nature of filmmaking
or any element of filmmaking.
Not at scale.
Let's move on to the next question.
Kyle Hammond from Chicago, Illinois wants to know, how long does it take to change over a set or plug into a new world?
Can you guys go beyond that depends?
Actually, so to change from one world to another, once it's designed, like art are waiting for the virtual production team is often, waiting for the art department. So it's like, we can do it like within seconds. Like on the wall change, and then typically the physicality of moving in and out of the foreground set can.
And then the blending between so then you need to get your lighting right, and obviously you'll have a pre-light in your schedule, but you'll then need to make sure that what we tend to do is we have a pre-light day and we have a desk op, so we set all of our levels, which makes things speedier. But in terms of like changing the environment on the wall, that's seconds, but then you need to get all of your art department in and everything is blended and lit nicely.
So in a scripted piece, we've done 4 in one day. We shot 19 pages of the script once doing that.
I'm going to guess that's a little quicker than changing to 4 locations in the field.
Yeah, no,
just a touch. Let's go to the next. Go ahead. Let's go to the next question. We've got. I want to get as many people in as possible because we get a lot of questions in the queue.
All right. Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Why did you start the Academy, and what has been the greatest unexpected benefit from the Academy?
So yeah, the Academy came from one a general theme of the company at the early days was that we were doing this education everywhere. We were trying to tell people about how great virtual production is, but also we had to find people for the jobs. Like there was basically no one who'd worked on a VP stage at that point. And so having done a couple of jobs, we found the ability to write out a job spec, and I could actually write down like these are the skills that I really need, and decided to set up an academy to then train people up through those career pathways, basically. So we structure our academy around all those jobs. So the academy exists to get people a job, basically, and like come do this training. And it's proven, like I'm looking downstairs and there's two people down there that have came through our academy and they work for us. Now they don't need to work for us. There's also people that have came through our academy that work for all sorts of other virtual production companies. But the point is that we wanted to grow the skill base out there. And by growing the skill base, then more people could do virtual production, more people could try it, more people could see the advantages, and then that will help fulfill and grow the industry. So I kind of think it's a bit like the sort of slightly like the Tesla model of giving out the IP to the battery, and then like everyone gets batteries, and then it just means that there's more electric cars now out there than there was previously.
Batteries get better.
We get to meet more nice people, so win-win.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely.
Back to that sampler. We can't forget the sampler. Work with nice people. Let's go to the next question.
Ronnie Hofsoy from Tromsø, Norway, has a question. What is the status of green screen in a world where LED volumes has gotten a lot of focus? For movies, in-camera VFX used LED volume, it's great, but do green screen and Unreal Engine still play a role in future productions?
Interesting question.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And, green screen is not gone away. Like, green screen is absolutely still a valid workflow and still one that people will use. And you can run a VP setup with green screen. So, and that's actually where a lot of this evolved from the Lion King and things, where you had simulcam and you had the same concept of running real time and the actors could see what was going on in the background as the camera moved. So, yeah, I think that we're always still going to see more and more developments in Unreal Drive, more and more people using green screen too. It's just, in my mind, a different way of filmmaking. You film in green, you film on location, you film with stop motion animation, you film with 3D, you film with virtual production. It's just a different way.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asking, how do you balance artistic knowledge, scenic design, and other stuff with technical knowledge, server, LED wall management, Unreal Engine, etc. in your curriculum?
Small little question there, guys.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. I'll let you answer it, but it's interesting.
Yeah, that's true. It is actually, again, one of the most kind of exciting areas of this whole thing, like particularly the creative element, the creative nature of working with Unreal and what that does to the pre-production process and the skills that you therefore need earlier on in the process is really, as Matt, is great. I love it. And like I think every job is still different, and like how you craft that, the environment design, how you craft the concept and the design of each background or whatever you're trying to achieve. So I think that for us, the academy has to be able to train people for jobs ultimately, and so we have a organization chart that shows all the different roles that we need on a set in order to achieve good results for our clients. And within each of those roles, we have, for example, a virtual art department supervisor who very much leads on the creative on that sense and leads on the management of the team to create the environments. And then we have a virtual production supervisor who's very much leading on the on-set, or what we're calling OSVP, the on-set virtual production, which is the servers, the render nodes, and everything. Now, there is definitely a crossover between these two, and they need to be sort of joined up as much as possible. And that's where we come in as a company. We excel at bringing these groups together rather than having separate vendors or separate people kind of fighting against each other. They're all umbrellaed under Final Pixel. So what that allows us to do is then suck up and get the best out of both, really, and make sure we get the best creative and the highest quality technical at the same time.
And it's about translating what's in the creative's mind into the technology. And so I think all of those roles, whether it be the VAD supervisor or the VP supervisor, have to have that element of skill of understanding the creative, but also understanding the technology.
It's like a turn back to, there's this been, and this is a big separate conversation perhaps, but like just to touch on to the viewer's point, the there's been this separation between science and art throughout education for a number of years now, and it's like you're either a scientist, you do sciencey stuff, or there's art, and you do art. It wasn't always like that way, it wasn't always like that in the olden days, not even the good old days, but like, science and art are much more interlaced. And I think that what virtual production does is really force that back again in film and TV in a way that very few, if any, other recent developments have ever done. You might say that digital was the big kind of tech disruption to film and TV, and the move to digital cameras and all the rest of it. I think this is on a different level, and this is much more the embedding of technology, even tighter in different ways with the artistic form of filmmaking.
Hey, if Da Vinci can do both, we can do both. Let's go to the next question.
J.J. McKenna from Santa Venetia, California. Have you tried using a remote team for production? And if so, what technologies are you leaning into for success? Or if not, then why not?
Remote teams. List? Yeah.
Remote teams, yes, great. We use Perforce to manage source control of our content. So we have a game engine. It's emerged from sort of managing big teams creating games, for example. A lot of people use this kind of technology, source control. So Perforce has been excellent for us. When it comes to remoting in, as in going into a different machine and then using that machine, we've used probably the most popular is either TeamViewer or Parsec. So these are off-the-shelf third-party tools. And again, that's one thing to say is I don't think we could have set up a company like this 10, 15 years ago, because there's now so much in the way of third-party applications that are very specifically designed for very quite niche things these days that it's great to be able to pick these up. So yeah, and then the other remote element that we've done, obviously, it's not new, but working with QTake, working with all sorts of different ways to get a high quality feed from the set, and then for people to review that when they're offset. What else?
Lucid as well. Lucid has been amazing. We, for example, when we did the Oracle Rebel Racing shoot last January now. Oh, it's on our anniversary a year ago. So what we were doing with that pipeline, we had our director was from LA, and he had gone out and got a load of the drone footage and the car plates that then, whilst we also had the Unreal team working on the virtual environments, 3D ones, he then flew over, handed the hard drive to our DIT, who then just worked out put a LUT on it, and then we put that footage onto our Lucid so that we could then send it. Some of it was going to our VFX teams, some of it was going straight onto our volume that we were going to be shooting with, and then we were doing our takes, and then we were putting a ProRes of it onto our Lucid, where our editor, who was based in LA, LA was then putting that down, and then they were able to do almost real-time editing as if they were on set. But Lucid, so I should have explained what Lucid is for those that aren't familiar. It's basically
we've had them on. We think we know distributed.
Yeah, okay, good. There we go then. Yeah. Just basically stores all our stuff really safely, and then we can just give a folder to somebody and they can go into it. So I would say that's also very good.
Perfect. Next question.
Robert Sababity, all the way from Poland, asking, how can we as producers in different cities and different countries with professional local equipment work with you on international events?
How do you find vendors?
As in the we needed to shoot in Poland, and so we would then work with them. As part of our trusted partner stage network, we have different partners across the globe, whether that be stages or whether that be equipment houses or whether that be service companies. We dial into wherever the client needs to be able to shoot in. We look for our nice people where that is, and we build our team around that. The other way around, if your people that are speaking from Poland want to work with us and want us to find a solution, we also have artists because we remote work so often. We have artists dotted around in most places actually now, so we can look at a more localized unit based on our network for you guys as well.
Let's go to the next question.
Dave Troutman from Edmonton, Canada, asking, can you elaborate on some of the things which have changed the way things are produced because of the virtual backgrounds?
Would it be easier to say what hasn't changed?
I would
So
say
much.
I could pick up a couple. I could mention some of the big ones anyway. Like one is this design period that you now have early on in the process, where you want to bring on a production designer, the director of photography, the VP supervisor, the VAD supervisor, the director, and you are now designing elements that, you know, in a previous kind of workflow may not have been finalized until the VFX starts, you know, into much later in the chain. So you're moving this post-production phase that is quite often done by those same people or a subset of those people a bit later in the process. You're having to move that much earlier on, and then give it the same kind of rigmarole and structure as the post process did, or else, you know, it wouldn't work as well. And that's part of the whole, you know, change in production, change in producing that needs a lot of attention. You know, if you think about post production now and like what is built up as an industry and how, you know, finite and detailed the post production pipeline has to be for a post house, you can't just expect to lift post and put it in pre and not follow an equally stringent, strong workflow for delivering, you know, the same thing. And I think that's for us where we've seen a lot of the gaps with virtual production is that there's been an assumption that we can just, let's just move post into pre. Yeah, we'll just do it. And it's not been produced. It's not been looked after. And then by the time it comes to the stage, environments aren't ready. Things are still happening. Changes are happening. Things aren't optimized. And then ultimately, people have really bad experiences with VP as a result. Whereas, yeah, I would say that for me is one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, I would say like from a production approach, like what would make me change my mind to go and shoot in virtual production? So say, for example, I had 5 pages of script and it all needed to be shot at 11 o'clock or between the time of 11 a.m. and 12 noon. But we obviously don't have those daylight hours anywhere in, I don't know, the UK definitely. I'm not sure about the US, but you know, it makes sense to then do that in a controlled environment. If 3 of those pages have got rain, we're then able to guarantee the rain, or they've got sunshine or wind. It makes the whole production process more controlled. So I think that's a huge one for me.
Let's go to the next question.
Back to Tromsø, Norway, for Ronnie Hofsoy asking, in the context of corporate events, could you recommend budget-friendly camera and lens options that deliver a good enough quality suitable for professional multi-camera live virtual production?
What are you guys seeing coming into that?
That's a good question. I've seen the Alexa Amira used, if that counts as mid-range. I don't know any others that you've recommend or seen.
The Reds, there was one of the Reds that was really good.
Yeah. I
can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, I think like it's still, I think the answer to that question is that virtual production multicam live is still a very new thing as well. Like there's not that many, I would argue, like productions that are using LED wall virtual production with multicam. There's definitely green screen out there, and we've seen that in some of the kind of more sports broadcasting kind of ways. But for the sort of thing that we're working on, you know, which is typically the ICVFX and camera, you know, with the LED, it's still a emerging method right now, you know. So yeah, I'd say other than the Amira, I've not seen that many.
Gen locked. The camera needs to be able to gen lock.
Let's try to get one more quick one in here.
A quick one from Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota. How can we contribute to the construction of the new world?
Is there something people should learn or focus on or equip themselves with in terms of thought or practice to kind of be a part of this new virtual world we're heading into?
I see. Sorry, I was like, gosh, that feels like a really holistic, massive question. How can we contribute to the new world? I mean, I kind of want to answer in that respect, though, because I do feel that there is a lot to be said about sustainability. There is a lot to be said about lowering our carbon footprint when we are either working on advertising or film and episodic. Like, I think that we can see a world in which we can create beautiful cinematic output of film whilst not killing our old world, current world to do it. I think that opening up doors to different walks of life to make sure that everybody can get involved in the creation stages, I think is huge. And I think that I'm going to let you answer the actual question.
No, that was good. I think learn Unreal Engine is a good one. A good thing to just, like I say, jump in, find out what this is all about, and then once you've done that, come and give us a call and we'll find some nice academy courses to take you on your path.
Michael, Hanah, it has been a pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you so much for coming in and helping us through this. We ran out of time, unfortunately, because there were a good number of questions in the queue. Don't forget, those of you who asked those questions, they will be back in. And Michael and Hanah, is there any way people can reach out to you if they want to kind of connect more directly or to learn more about what you're doing?
Definitely. I mean, you can visit our website, www.finalpixel.com, but also you can connect with either of us on LinkedIn. So Michael McKenna, Hanah Draper.
And then go to our social media channels, because we post a lot on, I think it's @ Final Pixel for Final Pixel, and then it's @ Final Pixel Academy for most of the channels.
And just a couple of notes about programming here. Don't forget, tomorrow we're doing phase versus polarity. This is one of our kind of technical subjects. People get those two confused all the time, so we'll talk about the differences and similarities, where you should be talking about phase, where you should be talking about polarity. Tomorrow is our audio day, as always. And on Thursday, for our video day, none other than Michael Cioni, an old friend of mine, is going to be here talking about what his new endeavor is. Michael comes out of one of the thought leadership positions for a long time, from with Panavision and more recently Frame.io, and it's just going to be a fascinating day tomorrow. So come in for those. Our thanks to our producers, everybody who added questions into the queue. We appreciate it. Without you, this show does not wrong. Everybody does not wrong. Everybody who added a question truly helped us drive this conversation forward. That's what we're here for. All the panelists who are here today, thank you guys very much, and men and women who are always popping up to help everybody understand technology, and our back-end crew, the unsung heroes of everything we do here, sitting behind the scenes all around the world, located in more corners of this planet than you can imagine, who arrive here and help every day put this show on. We are truly appreciative of all of you. The credits will roll in a minute. You can see some of the names. We'll be here tomorrow again. Thank you so much. Great job, guys. That was fascinating.
Thanks, Michael and Hanah. That is a really realistic.
Thank you so much for having us.
A really realistic glass brick wall. It looks behind you. It looks almost.
The plants are very convincing.
The foliage is getting really good in Unreal, honestly. Thank you very much for having us.
That was great.
It was great. Thank you. And it's always a pleasure to talk to people who are kind of building this stuff and kind of trying to create new things, because everything is changing out there. That's the one consistent. The number of years I've been in this, I don't think I've ever been in a position where there's a time and an era where things are changing as fast as they are right now. It's amazing.
Totally agree. Yeah. Struggling to keep up sometimes.
Yeah.
No matter